All right, boys, we're heading west.
Are we?
No, we're heading south
Yeah.
for a western.
Sure.
It's a western.
We
but
are kind
it's
of going
in the
west,
south.
though, because, like, part of it happens in the west, right? Like, that's... Yeah.
Yeah, I was right.
I hate to break it to you, they don't have mountains like that in the south. Like, it's...
There are some beautiful landscapes in this movie, man.
They really do, man.
Well, if you're new here, welcome to the show. If you're not, welcome back.
If you're not listening at all, screw you.
Yeah, if you're not listening, you're the enemy.
You're the problem.
You're the Calvin Candy. No, I
Ooh.
shouldn't tell you that. That's
Whoa.
rude.
That's,
Okay.
Wow. You know, there's people who don't listen to podcasts, and then there's serial racists, right? And I feel like those are wildly different types of people.
Yeah. Or sometimes the same. You never know. They could overlap, man. They could overlap.
True.
We're off topic. Kyle, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about the amazing Jamie Foxx movie where the black guy kills all the white people, and it's amazing. Django Unchained.
Django Unchained.
He is unchained, man. Well, except for that brief part in the movie where he is chained.
He is chained at the start of the movie and briefly towards the end of the movie.
Django 92.5% unchained.
That's right. That's right. He breaks free and then he breaks people.
Yes, he does.
All right. Dude, you know what threw me off so much whenever I was, doing my little research for this movie? The fact that this is 12 years old.
I know.
I feel like it's still new.
Dude, I remember the first time I watched this movie.
Right.
Oh, like vividly.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like 2012 and I was like, wow, 2012 was a long time ago. I'm getting old.
I know, man. Oh, it hurts.
You and I both turned 26 recently. Officially closer to 30 than 20.
Why? Why do you have to say that like that?
All right, man. Django Unchained from 2012, written and directed by the one and only Quentin Tarantino.
Thank God.
His follow-up to Inglourious Bastards. Is there a better 1-2 punch than these two movies?
I really don't think so. Honestly, I can't think especially not for things that aren't direct sequels of each other.
Right.
Like there's like the Christopher Nolan Batmans, which are all just bangers. You know, there's the original Star Wars trilogy, but there's not like a director in my knowledge, except for maybe like Martin Scorsese, possibly, who can do the like 1-2 punch thing Tarantino did with those. My dog has apparently very important things to say about Django Unchained since he just shoved his way into the room.
Well, he is a white German, and there is a white German in this movie.
This is true.
And he's not the bad guy. That might be a first.
He's not.
A white German protagonist.
Which is only interesting because he's the same actor who plays the white German antagonist in Inglourious Basterds.
No kidding. Wow, what a difference.
Wild.
Again, back to back. Is there a better supporting role 1-2 punch than Christoph Waltz here?
I don't think so, man. I really don't.
I honestly, I'm a huge Christoph Waltz fan, and I can't name another one of his roles. I've seen movies with him in it, but I can't name the characters like I can.
He is the Belgian dude in The Legend of Tarzan, that like thoroughly mid Tarzan movie from like 2016.
With Margot Robbie?
Yeah.
Yes. Never watched that. Saw the trailer, though.
It's fine.
I'm sure it's okay.
Yeah.
Does it have Phil Collins in the soundtrack, though?
It does not.
Well, then screw that movie.
Massive missed opportunity.
Massively. All right, we are way off track, man. We are going to do this one a little bit differently. So if you're like, why are these guys talking so much? It's because this one is going to be more laid back. It's freaking Django Unchained.
If you're like, what I love about this podcast is I don't have to watch the movie. They just give me the plot. This is not the episode for you.
Also, why have you never seen Django Unchained?
An excellent question.
Your life choices.
We love you, so we're holding you accountable. Watch the freaking movie.
Yeah. This was nominated for 5 Oscars. It won 2. Best Screenplay by Tarantino.
Yes.
Best Supporting Actor, Christoph Waltz.
Correct.
No nomination for Leo.
What? Oh, because, he didn't get his Oscar till The Revenant.
Well, he'd been nominated multiple times.
Yeah.
He hadn't won one till The Revenant, which I think was only like a couple of years after this.
Like 2015, yeah.
Right around, yeah.
Which, for the record, that's a disgrace. I mean, Leo DiCaprio, love him or hate him, is one of the greatest actors of like the last 30 years. I mean, come on. You can't. Ugh.
Not even a nomination, man.
I know.
He kills it.
He does. And people, but, I
was watching the behind the scenes here, and it was kind of interesting. Quentin Tarantino was talking about how Jamie Foxx approached this project and how he really brought to life the character of Django that he had a vision for. And then you talk to Jamie Foxx, and Jamie Foxx says, well, Christoph Waltz just walked in and he took it in his own style. And he elevated every scene. And then Christoph Waltz said, well, you have Leonardo DiCaprio. And Leonardo DiCaprio says, well, you have Samuel L. Jackson. And so they're all just elevated each other's performances. And then there's Kerry Washington, who's just why am I here?
Who's but I mean, I killed it, but maybe not to the level that the rest of these guys killed it.
No, I think she did a fantastic job, but she's definitely not she doesn't have the same name that those guys have. But oh my gosh, performance-wise, oh yeah, she definitely carries her own and then some. Every performance in this movie is fantastic.
Even the nameless ones, like even Jonah Hill's uncredited cameo.
Love Jonah Hill's cameo here. That scene cracks me up from start to finish. Big Daddy. If he's on screen, I'm chuckling, man.
I can't see anything. It's a raid. The horse can see. If the horse can see, it's a raid.
So Tarantino says the villain is the most important character in the movie. What you want to say, you say it through the villain. And this film, no matter the subtext, no matter what you want to say about it, is revenge against slavery.
Yep.
It's a love story, but it is in the Deep South, and you get a couple of the most despicable characters you can imagine. Some of the hardest scenes to watch, depicting racism and depicting the treatment of the slaves, and you got a badass cowboy who happens to be black, killing every single one of them.
It's kind of amazing, honestly. It's like
cathartic. It really is.
You're like, yes.
I know there's black cowboys before. Okay, Morgan Freeman in Unforgiven. I'm thinking I can't think of the name of the movie. Danny Glover's in one.
Appaloosa, or not Appaloosa.
Silverado. Yeah,
Silverado. Yeah,
Silverado. But a lead. First of all, a lead, and second of all, someone you want. Not that anyone would ever want to be a slave. Not saying that. But like the second half of the movie, he's so cool. Everything he does is so cool. You want to be like him.
And you want him to kill all the people. I think that's the thing, is that usually when the hero goes off the deep end and kills people, it's supposed to be some cathartic, like you're starting to become what you hate, this, that, and the other. And in this movie, you're like, yes, kill all of them. Every single one of them.
It's funny you should say that. There's another quote from Quentin Tarantino. He says, it's only through contrast to the antagonist that the hero's vengeance is seen in the light. He's talking about spaghetti westerns, but in this sense, a lot of similarities here. And make no mistake about it, you want to know how big of a fan of spaghetti westerns Quentin Tarantino is, okay? Django Unchained is kind of a remake of a character from spaghetti westerns, Django. The original is from the 60s, is I think 1966, and it stars Franco Nero, who's in this movie.
Wasn't that where the theme song comes from at the very beginning?
Yeah. That's the original theme from Django. And in the original Django, he's dragging this coffin, and then partway through the film, he's like surrounded by all these guys, and he pulls out the coffin or pulls a Gatling gun out of the coffin and just tears them to shreds.
As one does, you know?
Right. So and that was directed by a guy named Sergio Corbucci. He's an Italian director. He's considered the second greatest spaghetti western director behind Sergio Leone, who did Fistful of Dollars for a Few Dollars More and The Good, Bad, the Ugly.
And of course behind the legendary Chicken Alfredo.
I don't think that's it.
Oh, okay.
All right. You're Italian, so you can say that, but I mean... All right. Django Unchained pays homage to the spaghetti westerns, but he brings it back to America. He makes it American. Going forward, after this, Quentin Tarantino is going to make another western, The Hateful Eight, okay? Then he's going to make Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. What happens in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Rick Dalton...
I still couldn't tell you, honestly.
Okay, well, if you were paying attention.
Something about LSD and guns and dogs.
Rick Dalton is going to go to Italy to make a film for Sergio Corbucci.
That's right.
So that's part of the plot. So since Tarantino has made Django Unchained, he has in some way tied the rest of his movies to Westerns. You can definitely tell from interviews with him, he was greatly influenced by these Italian Western films. And Christoph Waltz had a line in the documentary. He says that the Western was an American genre, and then it was taken to Italy and made an Italian genre. And then it kind of fizzled out. And then with this, is there a more prominent Western in the past 20 years?
That's a good question. Probably not like original one.
Right. I think the only thing that comes to mind is Magnificent Seven.
Yeah, and that was a really good remake, but it was a remake.
It was a remake, and it wasn't nearly as impactful or influential as Django Unchained.
No.
So you could say Tarantino took the spaghetti Western and brought it back to an American Western.
Interesting.
I have heard rumor, and I don't know if this is confirmed. I have heard rumors that originally this was offered to Will Smith. Will Smith said this is going to be the greatest love story ever told, and he wanted to focus on the love story, and Tarantino said, nah, that's not really... It is a love story at heart. Everyone's aware of that, but that's not the direction.
This is the greatest vengeance story ever told, right. Will. The love story is, it's secondary. It's good, but it's secondary. As
much as, Will Smith's had his ups and downs, but as much as I trust his mind to know what the audience wants, I trust Tarantino's more. And so, if you maybe watched a movie called Emancipation, it was on Apple TV a couple years ago, about a runaway slave. I think he's a runaway slave, and he ends up joining with the Union Army, goes back and fights the South in search of his wife. Maybe confirms that was the original idea when Will Smith was cast as the lead.
Yeah, or that's what Will Smith would have wanted it to be. Like that's what fit his vision of what it should be more. Whereas Jamie Foxx is very okay with killing all the people.
In the behind the scenes, and then there's a documentary on Netflix. If you want to learn about spaghetti westerns, watch. It's called Django Unchained, and it's an interview with Tarantino, Franco Nero, and a few other kind of behind the scenes guys. But they're going to talk about that era of movies, and they're going to talk about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Django Unchained as well. One more thing on the cast before we kind of get into it here. When Tarantino offered the role to Samuel Jackson, he offered the role of Steven, and he goes, "You want me to play the most despicable black man in the history of cinema?" And Tarantino goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, no problem."
Sure. Yeah, perfect.
Which is the most Samuel L. Jackson answer you can get, and I love it.
He was probably like, "I'll be there tomorrow."
Also, Kerry Washington and Jamie Foxx worked together on 2004's Ray. Fun fact.
Hey, yeah. Dude, apparently Jamie Foxx is like a musical phenom.
Oh, yeah.
He's like a virtuoso in music as well.
Yeah, and have you ever seen him do impressions? The man is uber talented.
I watched him. Actually, my first experience with Django Unchained was not the movie. It was the SNL Christmas skit that Jamie Foxx did in 2012 about Django Unchained. Where he's like, he's like playing the piano, and he's like, "I have this new movie coming out. It's great. I'm a slave, and I kill all the white people. It's amazing." And then he goes, "And now that I've said that, when the season hits me, when I'm in my Christmas feels, I like to play from a holy book, the Book of 2 Chainz." And then he just starts playing like a 2 Chainz rap song on the piano.
Oh man, 2 Chainz, nothing more 2012 than 2 Chainz.
And my dad was the one watching it. He's like, "This is amazing. I love this guy."
I love it. We first see Django by the stars on his back, symbolizing that he's defined by slavery.
Ooh.
I have a couple interesting theories for the start of this movie, and like I said, we're not going to go scene by scene on this. We're just going to kind of discuss this movie and just kind of talk about it. One of the Speck brothers is played by James Remar. I don't know if I'm saying that right. He plays Ajax in The Warriors. I love that guy. He does great in that movie.
Okay.
I love seeing him pop up. Christoph Waltz's character. Let's talk about Schultz here. You just mentioned that the last time he played a white German, he was not nearly as likable.
Not a good dude. No. Hans Landa. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, you've seen Inglourious Bastards. The bad guy.
The very bad guy.
The bad guy.
The baddest of guys.
Hitler's in that movie, and he's considered the bad guy. In this movie, is he a moral person, or is he exploiting Jane Doe for his own benefit?
I think the answer to that question is yes. I think he's a man. I think he is a bad dude with a good moral code, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think he's a good person. I think he's a person with a very strict set of, like, this is how you operate in the world. And so I think he starts by, like, symbiotic relationshiping Django in the sense that he agrees to free him on the condition that he helps him with this mission and that he's free to go. But then as he learns about who Django is, his personal honor code kind of makes him, like, step up to the plate. Is my interpretation of the great German dentist turned bounty hunter.
Do you get Doc Holliday vibes?
You know, a little bit. That's kind of why I say he's a bad dude with a good moral code.
Yeah.
You know? Because Doc Holliday's not a good guy. Like, even, I love him, but even in Tombstone, he's not a good guy. They don't pretend he's a good guy. They don't really pretend that Dr. Schultz is a good guy or that he's even a reliable guy, as seen in what starts the climax of the entire movie at the very end, is an incredibly poor choice that is stupid and self-serving and not beneficial at all.
But he couldn't resist.
But he couldn't resist.
Yeah.
So, very Doc Holliday-esque of him.
Does his German ancestry play into this, I'm white, but I'm not white American?
No, I don't think it's that. I think that it's more of, like, he's not a realistic portrayal of, like, a person in his position in terms of his racial views. Probably. I can't promise there's not abolitionist bounty hunters, but, like, abolitionists are like 1% of the population at this point that we know of. So the odds of this guy being from Germany and being vehemently anti-slavery is one thing. Being vehemently, like, pro treating black people well, completely different thing.
Right.
So he'd have thought slavery was stupid, but he wouldn't have thought that Django was on his level, society-wise.
And he kind of does have that discussion with Jane Doe where he says, even though it appalls me to think of one person owning another, if I can get you to help me and you don't have another option, it is in my benefit.
Yeah. And that's, honestly, that would be, in my eyes, a pretty realistic thing to have happen. But people would do that now. We don't have slaves now. But if you could get a guy freed from a crime he didn't commit and all he had to do was help you commit Grand Theft Auto, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a pretty human condition thing, I think.
So the townspeople are going to see Jane Doe on a horse, but it's no bother to him. He's going to encourage the slaves that he, kills the Speck brothers. He's going to encourage them to head north. He's even going to show them the North Star. He's not really going to help them, but he's going to, hey, you want to take advantage of this, go right ahead.
You have two choices. You can get that beast off of the living Speck brother and carry him back to the town that you were in, which is at least 36 miles that way, or take this rifle, put a bullet in his head, bury them both deep, and make your way to a more enlightened part of this continent.
Yeah, I like the choice of words there, the more enlightened part. It makes me wonder, the further south he goes, the more it seems to bother him.
I think that the realization of how, like, callously accepted it is, like the societal nature, especially with the deep, deep South, like the Cotton Belt, just shakes him to his core. And there are records of European advisors to, like, the Confederacy. Again, not being abolitionist, not being equalist, but being anti-slavery, because at this point, Brazil and the United States are really the only two countries left with lots and lots and lots of slaves, and have been for the last 30 years. And so there's a lot of the European mindset is very much like, we don't think that black people are equal. We don't necessarily think you should treat them like cows either.
Horrible question, but Jane Doe's purchased for $125. Is that accurate?
That's like buying a Ferrari for like $50,000. It's the average price right before the Civil War of an unskilled, able-bodied male slave is $1,800 in their money, which is something like $30,000 today.
Yikes.
Yeah. So people like Calvin Candy, who have hundreds of slaves, are wealth-wise the equivalent of like artifact collectors today. Like people who go to auctions and buy vases and crap for, $25,000, $30,000. That level of wealth. Like just stupid, like I ooze money level wealth.
So when he offers like $12,000 for a Mandingo, you're talking hundreds of thousands?
Yeah. It's hard because inflation is not linear in the sense that you have to consider inflation and then you also have to consider like the power of money in society. But base rule of thumb, money is worth 30 times less than it was then. So if he's offering $12,000, he's offering like $360,000.
Okay.
In terms of purchasing power.
So it is a big amount.
It's literally a sports car. He's literally buying the price equivalent of a sports car off of this guy.
Some of the greatest lines in this movie, man. I just quoted them just because I love them. I want to talk about the script a little bit here. Last chance, fancy pants. It's perfect.
So good.
It's simple. It's to the point. You get the idea. When Schultz is explaining what bounty hunting is, and he says, light slavery, it's a flesh for cash business. That's pretty apparent. You can't argue with that.
Or the line where he says, this is what I do. I sell dead bodies for cash.
Yeah.
And that dead body is worth $7,000.
Right. What was bounty hunting really like during this time? Do we have a bunch of I'm not going to be a lawman, but I'm going to go kill me some bad dudes? Also, those wanted posters, how the hell could you tell what the person really looked like?
Well, that happens a lot, that issue. So really what it is that solo bounty hunters like Dr. Schultz, I'm not going to say they don't exist. Usually they are hired as a temporary posse member of a U.S. federal marshal.
Okay.
Generally speaking. Now, if you had a real big bad guy, then yeah, people would form their own posses and go after him. People hunt Jesse James. People hunt Billy the Kid. As far as professional bounty hunting, it's not unheard of, but it's more of a Hollywood creation than it is like a historical fact. Like most bounty hunters are hired by federal marshals to help them hunt people.
That'd be an interesting movie to do, a bounty hunter after Jesse James.
Yeah.
And he's never close. But he starts to realize like the weight of what he's doing as he starts to get a little bit closer.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting movie.
In the mini series on Netflix, or was on Netflix, Hatfields and McCoys, which is really good. The guy who stokes the clan war to a fever pitch is a former Pinkerton agent turned bounty hunter. So there are people who are bounty hunters by trade, but they're not, generally speaking, like roaming around like Schultz does. They stay in one spot, a trade post, this, that, or the other, and they get hired by federal marshals to assist them in helping take down these guys, or they're sent after them by a federal marshal.
So there's a quick flashback scene here where you see the original. It sounds weird to say owner of a slave, but I guess that's
who he is. He's Django's original owner. Yeah,
right. It's a weird concept. Anyways, the original owner of Django and his wife, Broomhilda, Old Man Karukin. If I said that right. When I saw him, I was like, "There's no way Tarantino put somebody in here that ain't somebody from the past." So I looked him up. It's played by a guy named Bruce Dern. He's George Spahn of Spahn Ranch and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The old man laying in bed.
Yeah.
He's also Tom Buchanan in the original Great Gatsby.
Oh, okay.
He also had some smaller roles in lots of westerns from the late 60s and early 70s, which again is what this, Tarantino's favorite era of film, including Hang 'em High and episodes of Gunsmoke and Bonanza. I think he was in an episode of Rawhide as well. So I mean, he's got some. He's got some films under his belt that really link to this film itself. Let's talk about Django's choice in clothes here, man. When he first gets to pick he tells him, Schultz tells him, you're playing a character. Now you can pick the character's costume. He's like,
you're gonna let me get my own clothes?
Yeah.
And you immediately know, you're like, oh god, what? Oh no.
But I don't know if this is the right word or not. It's funny. It's supposed to be funny, but it's almost in a weird way kind of childish. Yeah. Of like you let your kid pick out their clothes and they're gonna go with the most over the top thing they can imagine. But it shows where he is. It shows, he's given the reins for the first time in his life.
It shows like what he's deprived of. Like, imagine a world where you don't even get to decide what you wear.
Right.
Like, yeah.
And maybe he's always had a dream of wearing something like that.
Who knows?
So it's interesting to see his choice there.
And his bubble is immediately burst by the slave girl who looks at him and says, "You mean you want to dress like that?"
Yeah. And shortly after, he is going to dress more,
like a bounty hunter. Yeah.
Neutral tone, more like a regular cowboy. But the bright blue suit with the big white bow on the chest, and he's going to go and he's going to find the Brittle Brothers, and he's going to mess them up.
Little boy blue gone bad, man.
One of the Brittle Brothers earlier on is going to say, "I like the way you bed, boy," and he shoots him and says, "I like the way you die, boy."
Amen.
Oh man, get me out of my seat. I mean, get him.
So
Jamie.
good, so good.
Let's talk Big Daddy in this scene. Who?
You mean skinny Colonel Sanders? Yes. Let's please
Colonel
talk
Sanders,
Big Daddy.
man.
Colonel Sanders before the chicken.
He has the N-word in almost every one of his lines when he's first talking. I love the way that he has his slave girls address him, where she says, "Yes, I'm Big Daddy."
Yes, Big Daddy.
Is horrible and hilarious. And I think the only way you get away with this in this instance, because we're gonna get to Calvin Tandy, and he's not gonna be funny.
We're gonna get to the not hilarious slave owner.
So the caricatures that we see in this scene kind of lighten the tone and make an easier transition to some of the darker themes later in the movie.
I also think it's a really interesting dramatic change, because Big Daddy is evil by like neglect, whereas Candy is evil like directly, like he intends to be evil, like he wants to be evil, whereas Big Daddy's a bad guy, but he's bad through his acceptance of the status quo and through his like easy acceptance of this is the way things are and I'm at the top and I should stay at the top.
So Big Daddy has one of the funniest exchanges in the movie when he's telling the girl who's going to show Django around, and he goes, "You can't treat him like these other black folk because he's not like these other black folk.
You can't treat him like a slave because he's not a slave."
And she goes,
she has no idea how to react to that. She's like, okay, you want me to treat him like he's white?
Yeah, you want me to treat him like white folk? And he goes, "No,
I did
that's
not say
what
that.
I said."
And so he has to come up with this societal place to put this free black man. And finally, he thinks of this, unimportant like mention of this free black man who works at the local sawmill, who is implied to receive like a minutia more respect than a slave. And he's like, treat him like that. And so it's it really drives home the idea that like this society is so segmented that if the black person in the Deep South is not a slave, what the hell are they? Like to people on plantations, especially. Like,
and the fact that it bothered him so much when she was like, treat him like white folk, just, again, horrible, hilarious, because it's played over the top.
Oh, yeah, the tonal change is ridiculously funny.
You couldn't watch that and not think it's comedic, or meant to be comedic.
But that's kind of where you see, like, the evil in Big Daddy come out, too, because he kind of comes off as this, like, jokingly bad guy, and then you're like, oh, no, this dude is, like, he's bad. Okay. He's actively racist. That's cool.
So Big Daddy's hired the Brittle Brothers. They're going under a different name. I don't remember what the job title is.
They're overseers.
Overseers. Is that real? Would you hire people to look over slaves?
Yeah. So To describe the life of a slave in the Cotton Belt specifically, dawn to dusk, you stand in a field, back bent over to pick a cotton plant with your hands getting torn up because cotton plants are thorny and rough. You have to pick hundreds of pounds of cotton in a day to not get beaten. And you're under the glaring sun. You get water at like regular-ish intervals, but you eat like when you start and when you're done. And to ensure that you do this and you don't run away from the giant cotton field and the evil people, you hire really bad dudes with whips and occasionally clubs and guns to enforce by fear. And much like slave owners, there are records of different levels of overseer, from generally like antagonistic to like pure evil. But by and large, their job is to beat you into obedience. And if nothing else, to show everybody, all the other slaves, that if you slow down or if you argue with me, I will beat you into the ground.
Makes me think of like prison guards at a concentration camp.
Honestly, yeah, it's a similar thing. You rule by fear. And you rule by you rule. The goal is to make everybody so afraid of you that they won't help each other.
So on that cheery note, we have a hilarious scene with the Klan next.
We really do, which is just an awful thing to say.
It's so funny.
This movie, like when you watch it, it makes so much sense, and then you say it out loud, and you're like, "Am I a bad person? Like, do only bad people like this movie?"
If you didn't listen to our advice at the beginning, you've never seen this movie, and you're like, "These guys are laughing about the Klan." Before you cancel us, watch the damn movie. Okay?
Watch the movie, okay?
Okay, like it's. And that's, I think, what is so brilliant about this movie is that it deals with such horrible and dark history, and yet it's almost uplifting.
It highlights the stupidity of it, though. Yeah. I think is what makes it so powerful.
Right?
Is like, this is a stupid way to think, and it like a stupid way to live life, and millions of people were just like, yeah, okay, sure.
Well, yeah,
100%.
Millions of people who were in a position to benefit from it.
Yeah,
we're like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Oh man. So this is a nice little sidestep and break before Jane Doe's going to transition into really a cold-blooded killer, okay? He's going to start practicing, and he's going to find out really quickly he is damn good with a gun.
Which we find out when he hits Big Daddy on a running horse about 300 yards away with iron sights.
Yes, and then he's going to practice, and he's going to put the beer bottle in the snowman. He's going to shoot a hole perfectly down the center of it. At the very end of the film, and I think this is kind of a weird thing to do, but they say, you know what they're going to call you? The fastest gun in the South. And that's that's Schultz talking to Django.
And you're like, I don't think they are, man. I think they're just going to call me the N-word again and again and again.
Yeah, more than likely. But yeah, kind of a weird spot to put it in at the very end. But anyways,
it's Tarantino. There's always going to be like one thing where you're like, why?
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways,
okay.
So we have seen Jane Doe transition from a slave with no power to someone who doesn't understand what to do with their newfound freedom and their newfound abilities, and is vengeful, and we know is vengeful, rightfully so. And then he's going to start to hone his craft, and he's going to say, all right, it's time to go find my wife. I've now been given the ability to free her, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I have an interesting kind of theory about this right here. This is about an hour into the film. We have about an hour and 50 minutes left-ish.
Sure.
This kind of seems like an hour-long prequel to the rest of the film. Let's find out who Schultz is. Let's find out who Jane Doe is. And they have the German story of Brunhilde, who she's named after, the princess in the castle, surrounded by a pit of fire, guarded by a dragon.
Siegfried and Brunhilde, it's a really cool story. Look it up.
Is it real?
Yeah, it's real.
Okay. So that's kind of the story that he's gonna, well, this is real life in this instance, is that she's surrounded by fire. She's in the deep south. And she's impossible to get to
in the dragon's den, you know.
Yeah, and he's gonna go conquer that dragon. But if you think about it, the only three characters that we really carry over are Jane Doe, Schultz, and Brunhilde. And you can look at whenever they go to first visit with Calvin Tandy, as the first act. This is an introduction to our characters. This is an introduction to where we're going, and we're going to have a longer story to get there. Schultz realizes that he's embarking on a journey that's not self-serving. This is when I think, because if you started when he goes with Django to meet with Calvin Tandy, Schultz is a good guy. He has nothing to gain from this. True. He's doing it for Django.
But again, he also likes killing. He actively enjoys killing people that he thinks are bad people. Is another point that's made when Django's learning to be a bounty hunter after the hilarious, as much as I hate to say it, clan scene, and they're targeting a farmer who is plowing a field in front of his 12-year-old son, and you have this quick morality debate between Schultz and Django, which is only spoken by Schultz, but it's the argument of, can you justify killing a man for past actions, and does a man's body count weigh against him if he's changed his ways? Because this guy is not hurting anybody. He's clearly been out of the racket for a while because his son is big enough to help him plow. And Schultz's justification is, well, he did bad things in the past. He's a bad man. We're going to kill this bad man, and we're going to sell his body. And you can tell that Django doesn't fully buy that, but he understands that it's a means to an end, So I think that sets up a lot of the conflict between the two of them, minor though it is, as they get deeper into the belly of the beast, so to speak. Because if Schultz can't kill the bad people, he doesn't want anything to do with them. Whereas Django is killing is simply a means to an end, and until I get to where I need to do that, I will use whatever means possible to get to my end, which is to get my wife. Right,
which Django is going to then present later on whenever there's scenes where things are happening to other slaves, or not other slaves, but things are happening to slaves, and Django's going to act unbothered, and it is going to bother Schultz. So we're going to kind of flip the morality.
Well, to Schultz, killing's an answer, to Django, killing's a tool. I think is the best way I can describe it. To Schultz, killing is the solution, and Django's killing's not a solution, but it'll get me to a solution, so okay.
Other than, and that's funny you said a means to an end, Big Daddy, what was the reason for killing him?
Probably just, I think it's the character arc of Django. I think at the beginning of the movie, in the prologue, so to speak, he has enough hate in him that he thinks he's Schultz, and it's not till you get deeper in the movie that he realizes he's not. You know what I mean? I think that he legitimately thinks that hate is enough to kill people with, and also Big Daddy did lead a gang to their stagecoach and try to kill them, and the implication is he'll just keep coming back. So, you could argue that, but I think at the beginning he's just so full of righteous anger that he's killing everybody he sees, and then he manages to pinpoint that anger into a rapier stab instead of a sledgehammer, and that's what makes him more dangerous than Schultz at the end of the movie.
I just thought it was interesting. Other than the Speck brothers at the beginning, where he frees Django, Big Daddy was the first person to be killed by them that wasn't for a bounty.
Yeah, this is true.
So lots of transitions here, but it sets up perfectly where they're going to go, and where they're going to go is straight into a den with a diabolic man.
Yeah.
Hatred is not.
Oozes.
It's not even hate. He is not even hatred, man. It's so. I think he's the embodiment of ignorance.
Oh yeah.
And just pure evil. He's a terrible person. Terrible person.
Oh yeah.
Django's gonna have the most American line right before he's gonna go meet with Calvin Tandy. He has the most American line in the movie. One of, if not the most American line of all time. Not while I got my freedom. Not while I got my guns.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, baby. All right, let's get to it. There's a lot to take in during the first Mandingo fight scene. There's the introduction of Candy. There's the introduction of the Mandingo fighting and the violence that it brings.
There's two people butchering each other with their bare hands in the middle of a very nice room in front of a fancy fireplace, while two guys sit in chairs and watch.
Now, I mentioned Franco Nero, the original Django, is in this movie.
Oh, is he the Spaniard dude?
The one sitting opposite of Calvin Tandy, whose a slave loses the Mandingo fight. That is the original Django. And later, he comes over to the bar and he asks Django what his name is and can you spell it? And he spells it and he says the D is silent. And Franco Nero says, I know. Because he's Django. Anyways, cool little scene there. We're going to see the disgust on Schultz's face and the slaves in the room. We're going to see the excitement on Franco Nero's and Calvin Tandy's face during the fight scene between the Mandinos. And we're going to see the indifference on Django's. It's really going to set up where we're going to go from here. Django is playing a character. And Django is playing a character so well that he is perplexing everyone around him, including Schultz, who knows he's playing a character.
Yeah, he's playing the character of the black slaver. And the craziest thing is they existed. There weren't very many of them, but they were a thing. There were black people who were slavers and slave traders. It's crazy to think about. Anyway, and when he describes it to Schultz, he's like, you want me to be a black slaver? He's like, a black slaver is even lower than the head house slave, and buddy, that's pretty effing low.
Yeah. Who is going to be Steven later on.
And Schultz says, then play it that way. And Django's like, okay, all right.
And he plays it. He plays it very well. So we're going to have the scene. He's going to set up, basically, Schultz is offering $12,000 to buy a Mandingo. It's a ploy. And he says, you walk up, you try to buy a horse, and the farmer says, no, you offer to buy the farm. Well, you offer something so ridiculous that the farmer has to sell, and in turn, you get the horse. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to offer...
You offer $12,000 for a $9,000 slave.
Right.
Dude's got to listen.
Yes. But they're not trying to buy a Mandingo. They're going to purchase and get the freedom papers of Broomhilda. We're going to establish a rivalry and a hatred between two people here. Django and Billy Crash, played by Walton Goggins. These two guys are not going to like each other from the very get-go. And Billy's going to tell...
I think part of it is that Billy understands, unlike everybody else, Billy understands immediately that Django is an actual threat. Mm-hmm. Because everybody else is kind of blinded by their racism enough that they just think he's like a spectacle, like the strong man at the circus. Or he's just some annoying little, piece of crap we have to put up with to get our money. Yeah. And Billy is like, this man is dangerous. Yeah. Like, he is undermining our entire social order, and he's dangerous. He will kill us. So I should probably kill him first. Like,
he goes, I'm going to go walking in the moonlight with you. And Django replies, you want to hold my hand?
Bro. Man. Dude, if Calvin Candy wasn't there, those two would have gunned each other down in that scene. Like,
and I'm going to go walking in the moonlight with you is a great threat.
Yep.
But you want to hold my hand is an even better reply.
It's reminiscent of Johnny Ringo saying, I got your number now, and Doc Holliday said, you're a daisy if you do.
Oh, man. Okay. So there's going to be a slave in a tree. We're going to get a very visceral scene. But a little side note here. One of the trackers is played by horror makeup effects legend Tom Savini.
Ooh.
Tom Savini did the special effects for the first and fourth Friday the 13th, The Burning. He did a bunch of different ones. I'm trying to think of others. Dawn of the Dead. And he's also in From Dusk Till Dawn, which was written by Quentin Tarantino. So always good to see him. I love Tom Savini.
Can we talk about how the head dog wrangler sounds like everybody's drunk uncle at the family reunion?
You can't understand a word he's saying. I couldn't understand him.
We got about 20 miles of prop per gig, so we got us like he literally turn the subtitles on if you don't have them on.
Yeah. The superior race, everybody. Here we are. Anyways, he's got like a half pound of tobacco stuck in his jaw, rotting away whatever teeth he has left.
He's got like 5 brain cells left, and 3 of them are chewing the tobacco.
Yes. I also like the little guy's little dance he does whenever he lets the dogs loose.
Yeah, dances over dogs ripping apart a guy. That's Yeah,
this is borderline like Wrong Turn, Backwoods Hillbillies, evil people who
Have you seen the documentary Deliverance?
Yeah, the documentary Deliverance. Anyways, they played their part well. They did a good job. I hope that's not who they really are, but
oh, God. I hope dude,
I hope they were really good actors. Not.
I hope typecasting was not something we used for the white people in this movie.
Schultz is going to show his compassion, and I like when you have this zoom. I think it's done 3 times. And there's literally a sound effect that goes with it. It's going to happen twice with Calvin Tandy. The first time is when we first meet and we first see Leonardo DiCaprio's face. He turns around and he doesn't say a word. He just nods and kind of smiles like a gesture. It's almost like they're saying that wasn't expected. And so then later on when Calvin is, saying, now who's going to pay me for this runaway slave? And Schultz says, I will. I'll pay you. And he turns around and he goes, you will? He's surprised. It's unexpected. And then later on, spoiler alert, if you, again, have not seen this movie, when Calvin Tandy gets shot, the same zoom's going to happen with Steven, with Samuel L. Jackson's character.
Yeah.
Django, seeing that this is a slip on Schultz's part and is making Tandy curious about their intentions, Django says no, he's not. And he's going to show how merciless he is. Yeah. And you've got to wonder, in this scene, Calvin Tandy watches Django intently. He stares him in the eye as he doesn't look. The two are looking at each other while the dogs are ripping this man apart. And Schultz is horrified, and it's going to end up kind of haunting him and kind of be the reason why he shoots Calvin.
Well, and Candy says your buddy looks a little green in the gills for somebody interested in Mandingo fighting, and he says he's just not as used to Americans as I am. I'm more familiar with what one man can do to another man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's going to be a little suspicious, but it's not going to be Calvin who catches on. What do you think's going through Django's mind during this scene? Is he thinking Broomhilda? Is he thinking, this is what I got to do? Is he in character, or does he just really not care? I mean, you've got to imagine a slave at this point in time is probably seeing horrible, horrible things happen to other slaves.
I think it's I cannot save any of these people, and the only chance I have to save the person that I can save, who is the person that I love, is to leave them to their fate. I think it's that really awful survival logic you have to use, where it's like they're not any worse off with me not helping them than they were if I didn't exist in the first place.
Right.
So I think he hates it, but I also think that he is a far more practically minded person than Schultz, which you see again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, because Schultz is like, we are surrounded by gun crazy hillbillies, quit antagonizing them. He's like, if I don't antagonize them, they get bored. They get bored, they kill us. Like, this is what we have to do. You told me to play a part. We're playing a part. This is the part. It's not pretty. You said your world is ugly. This is my world. It's uglier.
Right. We're going to arrive at Candyland here. And Samuel L. Jackson, man. One of my favorite actors of all time.
Might be the most racist character in this movie.
Hold on.
We are surrounded by slave owners.
We'll get to this in a little bit. I want to break down his character a little more. I don't think he's racist. I know that's a hot take. I don't think he is, and I'll explain why here in a moment. But first, I want to try to talk about these things. Steven is the real version of who Django is pretending to be.
Yes. Well, Steven is the head house slave, who is the lowest of the low, other than the black slaver.
A side note: Candy sleeping with his sister?
I don't think so. I think he's just a weird freaking dude.
I think the sister's weirder. She's always smiling so strangely.
Yeah, but they live on a plantation that takes like 2 days to get off of, man. Like,
she probably doesn't see anybody.
It's like all the people in Lost slowly losing their minds. Same thing.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna see Hildy. She's in the hot box. Django showing some restraint.
But just barely.
Barely.
By the skin of his teeth.
And I don't know if it's shown in here or not. I think Steven sees it. He sees it.
I think Steven reads Django like a book from the moment that they get his wife out of the hot box. 100%.
We're going to get to the dinner scene here. Let me go ahead. Okay, let's break down Steven's character here. Right. I don't think he's racist.
Okay.
I think he belittles other slaves and other black people only to promote and kiss ass to Calvin. I think he sees himself in a good position, and he's doing whatever it takes to maintain that good position. I think he's indifferent. I think he's self-centered, not racist. He's so self-centered and so self-serving that he doesn't care what happens to other people. Black, white, it doesn't matter to him as long as his position doesn't change.
The reason I think that he's racist is because I think you would have to be so buddy with Calvin Candy, even if it's, survivalist and self-serving. Like he obviously wasn't when he was growing up, but I think 70 whatever year old Steven has warped himself into a racist to justify why he sits at the right hand of God and nobody else does.
What is that one experiment where you have the prison guards and the prisoners?
Exactly. It's the prison experiment. If we're all trapped together and I make one of you the head guard, you will immediately start treating everybody else like
right. That's what I'm saying. But does that make you racist?
I think the way that he talks about them makes him racist, if that makes sense. I think the use of racially derogatory language towards people that are enslaved while he is also enslaved, I'd argue he's racist, but I'd argue that he's racist because he has to be.
Yeah.
In his mind. In his mind, he has to be racist. So that Candy isn't suspicious of me. So that he thinks that I know that all of these people are worms and I'm a caterpillar.
Right.
I at least can crawl on the ground instead of slither.
And one day I'll be a butterfly.
Yeah.
Okay. The subtleties during the dinner scene are going to paint the picture. Okay. Hildy being there causes Django to break his character, and Steven's going to immediately notice it. No one else in the room does, except Steven, because, again, I think, same as what you talked about earlier, you saw only Billy Crash saw Django as a threat. I think that Steven also sees Django as a threat, but differently because it makes him less special. He's above all the other black people around him, all the other slaves around him. But here comes someone who's equal to him, maybe even considered a little bit more of has even more power or a higher position than him. And he's threatened by that.
It's like being the quarterback of a Division II school and somebody brings in a Division I transfer guy.
Yeah.
Is the vibe you get from Steven. I know I'm on top, but I'm on top of the slaves and I'm still very much a slave. And if I piss Calvin off too much, he's going to kill me and bury me in a shallow hole.
Right.
And this guy, for some godforsaken reason, gets to ride in here on a horse. He gets to sleep in a bed in the house. He gets to be talked to with, patronizing respect, but something that vaguely resembles respect. And I get crapped on every day of my life. So I think it starts as this guy is a threat to my self-worth, and it becomes this guy is a threat to what I have created for myself over the last 60 years.
Notice Django, though he's at the end of the table, has a seat at the table, and Steven does not.
Yep.
Okay. Again, the subtleties here. Schultz lays the seed for his fake love for Hildy. Hildy, having not gone through the transition and growth that Django did, cannot play her character. She cannot lie. She is and has been nothing but a slave. She's still Act 1, Scene 1, Django. She's never been given an opportunity to grow, to become more. Which, you can't... The psychological, we talked about the oh crap, what'd you call them? Overseers. We talked about the overseers, and yes, there's a physical threat there, but you've also got to think of the psychological threat and the psychological demeaning.
You may have a name, but you're cattle, man. That's how slavery worked. You're as expendable as the calf in the chute.
Not to compare a bad job to slavery. All I'm saying is you worked under a manager who was overseen, overbearing, puts you down at every point you can, or point that they can. You start to think that you aren't good enough for this. And it's not until you step away and you go, wait a minute, what the hell was I doing working for that jackass? But there's no stepping away when you're a slave. That's your entire world.
It's that, but instead of your self-worth, it's your actual sense of humanity and individualism.
And safety.
And other than just the basic value of being a person, you are societally nothing outside of being a slave.
Yeah.
And the only reason that you think you're more is because you tell yourself you are to not go insane.
Like I said, Django, we saw the whip marks of the stars on his back from the whipping. He's defined by slavery at the start of here. We're also going to see, in this dinner scene, Hildy's stars. Because she still is. Have we seen Django stars since? Not till after this, because he's grown out of it. He's now wearing, nicer clothes. He's now speaking like someone who's not a slave. Hildy, it just isn't. And that is going to foil their entire plan here.
Well, Hildy makes the same mistakes in Candyland that Django makes at Big Daddy's plantation, but she doesn't have Schultz to bail her out.
Right.
Is the parallel.
Steven is going to set the trap. I kind of jumped the gun here to force a reaction from Django, which is showing Hildy's torn back.
Mm-hmm.
Steven's not looking at anything in the room other than Django's eyes, and he can see there's something there. He's going to go back. He's going to confront Hildy. He's going to say, "You know him," and she's going to say no, but he can see through it. He knows the truth here.
So then he calls Calvin into the smoking room, and Steven quickly proves that he is the smartest person in this house. And it's not even close.
Steven in this scene drops his squint, drops his accent. That's just Samuel L. Jackson. That's not even Steven. It shows
it's the way Steven talks to the maids, the other slaves, when he's not in front of Calvin.
When he's not in character.
This is why Steven gets to be Steven. Because Steven, when he's not in front of the crowd and has to appease Candy's sense of ego, is a diabolical, plotting, megalomaniac.
Yeah.
And Calvin Candy loves it.
Yeah.
Because Steven has to use it to benefit Candy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's why Steven gets to be a prick to his owner, who could, in theory, have him killed at the drop of a hat, because he's a tool, and he's a freaking useful tool.
As a physical therapist assistant, it drives me nuts that Steven's cane is like 6 inches to a foot too short for him. It was clearly handed down from someone who was not Steven. It is way too small.
But the thing is, as we find out later in the movie, he doesn't actually need it.
No.
So it doesn't matter, because it's just part of his gimmick.
But it just drives me nuts.
His gimmick, if you will.
Got him. So it's widely known that Leonardo sliced his hand open during the scene.
Because did he bring it down on a wine glass or something?
I think it's glass. Yeah, so he did, and he just continued to go, and it added to the scene.
And he rubbed his blood on Kerry Washington's face.
I do believe that they had changed it, and it was fake blood by that point. I don't believe he rubbed his real blood on her face. Regardless, it definitely adds to the scene, and it goes to show how much of a professional he is.
Calvin Candy also goes from stupid evil to evil.
Pompous evil,
real fast,
to violent evil,
to sociopath, drop of a hat.
I do think that this scene kind of explains his racism. It seems like something that was handed down to him. I feel like as most racism is handed down from generation to generation.
And it's also that it's that fictional scientific racism that they tried to use even up until the 70s.
Really?
And it's bogus. Oh yeah, it's the movie 42, there's this really great line with the two sports announcers when Jackie Robinson plays his first game, and this guy goes, it's unfair to have African Americans in the sport of baseball. I'm not racist. It's biological fact. They have a longer heel bone. It gives them faster speed. And then there's crap like John Candy said about how there's 3 knobs in every African American skull that prove that they're subservient.
Calvin Candy, not John Candy. John Candy was an American blessing.
John Candy was an amazing human. Calvin Candy, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, the 3 bumps that are linked to the part of the brain that is linked to servitude. There is no part of the brain linked to servitude, you racist piece of crap. Things like that. The level of racism that was prevalent was so stupid, it's laughable.
It is laughable.
Taken in a vacuum, the statements that were made are ridiculous.
Right. That's why it is. Look this up. It's defined as comedy first.
Yeah.
And it's hard that this tone is impossible to catch. If you try to redo this, it'd be either the most offensive or the most unfunny movie you've never, or both, you've ever seen.
you had one shot to make this movie, and you needed the perfect director, the perfect cast, and that intangible thing that comes together when people make a really good movie.
Yep.
And you got it.
You got it. Significance of white cake with white or vanilla frosting as dessert. It just seems like the white has won.
We will be having white cake.
We'll be having white cake. I hate the way he says white cake.
There are so few movie characters that actually make me want to come out of my chair and hit them with something heavy, but I would hit Calvin Candy with a sledgehammer every day of the week.
100%.
I want to see where the 3 bumps on his skull are.
Damn.
Probably the part of his brain that's douchebag.
Anyways, I just thought it was interesting they were having white cake. There's got to be a symbolism there. This false victory of the evil Southern whites in this situation. And then Schultz is going to shoot him in the chest.
Yep.
Which we've seen his Derringer trick here performed by Schultz and by Django earlier on in the film. Yeah, we talked earlier about how this is the point where it's no longer self-serving for Schultz to be going on this adventure. And I think he kind of decides, because he's thinking there's flashbacks here of the Mandingo that's torn apart by the dogs. And I think he just realizes that, you know what? If my life leads to one moment and it's killing this son of a bitch, that's exactly what's going to happen.
And I think this is where we cement that Schultz cannot make the journey to being a truly good person, in the sense that his last act is an impulsive, though you understand it in the moment, it's an impulsive and selfish decision that dooms the people that he's there to help, and he knows it, and he does it anyway.
Yes, or in the mentor-student, almost father-son relationship that he has with Jane Doe, does he have so much faith in Jane Doe that he knows that even though he's killed himself, Jane Doe's going to get out of this?
I just think his guilt drives him insane.
I mean, maybe.
When he looks at Django and he says, "I'm sorry, I just couldn't help myself," in kind of that giddy way.
Yeah.
I think that Django has a reason to kill the people he kills.
Mm-hmm.
Schultz, until helping Django, only has money.
Yeah.
And I think, and I can't promise this, to me, the flashbacks of D'Artagnan, the slave that is killed by dogs, and John Candy doing it, not John Candy, God, Calvin Candy, and Calvin Candy doing it over money, hits him in the soul, because take the racism out of it and give Candy a gun and not a pack of dogs, and how is he different than Schultz?
Right.
You know? And so I think Schultz is like, I'm a bad dude. I'm a really bad dude. And it drives him insane in a very short period of time. And then he just loses it. And he does one great, like, soul scratching act. And then he immediately realizes what he's done, and he apologizes to his student, and then he gets gunned down.
So I'm going to say this wrong. Fleur Elise, Beethoven, plays as the paperwork for the deal is done. Then when the shootout scene starts, it's Tupac. And I thought that might be the biggest jump in a soundtrack of all time. This is a great song. It's Tupac. I don't think it's actually a Tupac song. I think it's a few of these songs have been featured before, where he kind of takes it's like a mashup between two different songs. So James Brown and Tupac are on this song together. And I really think it's just a mashup, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyways, The Three Musketeers was written by Alexandre Dumont, black. He really was a black man who wrote.
Yeah, he was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That was just a little side note that I was just wondering for sure.
And he's French, which is really funny. And his books are always about throwing off the social order to do what's right, in an 1860s sort of way, or an 1830s sort of way. But yeah, that's like the Three Musketeers are about opposing the king and opposing the cardinal to do what is right for the people.
Candy's death has to be one of the more shocking deaths in cinema.
Oh, dude, it comes out of nowhere.
And then followed by Schultz immediately. It's almost like you go, well, what do we do now? Where are we going from here?
I think it's interesting, and I might be reading too far into this, but the Derringer that he uses very, very obviously has 2 barrels, implying that you have 2 shots. Both of the times it's fired in the movie, the second shot is desperately needed and never used. This implies to me that the Derringer is a symbolism for action before thought.
Right.
Is that it's the gut reaction gun?
Yeah.
and they don't think about it. And that's why Django freezes when he shoots the first Brittle brother with it, and it's why Schultz freezes even though he knows that a guy has a sawed-off shotgun in the room with him after he uses it.
I like it. I will not say this word, so.
Yeah.
But there's a line. Who gave a goddamn gun in the middle of this shootout? It's so funny.
Considering that we have built this empire on treating slaves like animals, it's a pretty valid question.
It's so funny.
You know?
It's not the guy you can barely understand. He gets shot. I'm pretty sure he's the guy naked in the bath that gets shot later on.
Yeah.
But
it's just a random dude. I don't think it's anybody.
It's just a random dude in this thick hillbilly. It's not even southern. It's hillbilly backwoods accent that shouts this out. And then Billy Crash with another great line following up after Jane Doe is captured. Time to say goodnight to them nuts, Blackie. It's so funny.
And then Steven comes in and he's like, hey, Miss Laura decided that we're not going to do that. And he's like, well, she didn't waste any time in telling me, did she?
As he's holding his dick, as he's holding it in his hand.
And then he pouts and puts his red-hot Bowie knife out in a pail of water as he, stalks away. And then we see that Steven is, once again, the most conniving, smartest person on this plantation because he gives a self-serving monologue. You want to know how evil I am, Django? You want to know how evil and clever and smarter than the rest of you I am? Let me tell you, they thought of 100 ways to kill you, and I thought of one that's the absolute worst. We're going to sell you to miners. They're going to work you till you die. They're going to hit you in the head with a hammer. They're going to throw you in a hole in the ground, and nobody will ever remember who you are.
Is there an equivalent? Okay, so we have like plantation slave owners. Sorry, we have like plantation slave owners. Is there a what would this be? A business that owns slaves that uses them for business? It's called the LeQuint Dickey Mining Company.
Yeah, there were slaves everywhere. Really, usually what it is it's. Oh, this is going to sound so awful because they treated people like cattle. It's slaves that can no longer physically perform to the level that they wanted them to, or it's rebellious slaves, or it's this, that, or the other. But there are slaves that work in sawmills, there are slaves that work in mines. It's just that the vast majority of them worked on plantations because that was the biggest profit margin, and it made the most economic sense to use untrained labor. Because the thing about slavery is if you give the slaves skills at all, they might leave and get a different job. Or they might find somebody who treats them better. And there are a handful, proportionately speaking, of free African Americans in the South, even at the height of slavery, because they have skills. And if you loan them out places, if you're a skilled worker, you usually get some of the pay. And so the issue is if I have a skilled slave, he might eventually earn enough money to buy his freedom. And I don't want that. I don't want my Ferrari driving itself away with AI. Drive. How does
Tesla.
That's not an investment that I want to make. And so it's this really weird dichotomy of we'll give them to the mine, but only as refuse, or we'll give them to the mill, but not very many of them.
Yeah. Okay, I was just curious.
Or we'll give them to the LeQuint Dickeys who specialize in working them to death.
The rest of this movie is pretty straightforward. This is probably we'll get to our biggest nope. This is probably my biggest nope here. Is the whole. I understand that Steven thinks it's diabolical, but let's give him a way to escape. And then he can come back, and he just kills everyone. There's not even really a shootout at the end. My favorite line again. I can't say these lines, man. But when Steven says, "I count 6 shots," and he goes, "I count 2 guns." Oh, it's so good. Anyways, one of the transporters is Quentin Tarantino with an Australian accent.
Yes, he is, and he blows up with dynamite, which is awesome.
Yes, he gives himself a very glorious death in this. All right.
I will say one of my favorite lines is, "Now don't drop it. I just had the sight fixed and it's absolutely perfect." And he goes, "Is that so?" And then he shoots the guy through the holster with the gun.
All right. Let's do 60 seconds, biggest dope, biggest nope. And then we got something a little special for y'all at the end.
Who's starting?
Right. I don't care. I can start if you want.
You start. You do it.
Okay. Ready, set, go. Okay. I already did my biggest nope. My biggest nope is that scene almost to the end to where It's that James Bond. Let's find a way to get him to where he can be free, or to escape, and it just drives me nuts. It's like, all right. Anyways, moving on. We should have fast forward through this. Biggest dope, the screenplay. It's perfect. Like we said, if you did it any other way, it would be either offensive or not funny or just bad. And it's perfect. It blends everything perfectly. Okay, go it.
All right, biggest dope character acting, 100%. There is not a single role with a spoken word who phones it in this movie. Even the people who don't have names to their characters. Beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. My biggest nope, for me historically, is the amount of guns that just didn't exist then that are present in this movie. The repeater rifles aren't really a thing. You have revolvers, but they're cap and ball. So the one that Django has is fine, but the peacemakers that the overseers have, can't do it. They don't fly. Metal bullets don't exist until the late 1860s, guys. Sorry.
Ugh. And this is what, 1858?
Yeah, and so it's kind of from a gun perspective, since it's such a gun focused movie, it's fascinating because if it took place 10 years later, all the guns would be close enough to like be above scrutiny, but then slavery doesn't exist.
Right. So it doesn't work.
And ironically, part of the reason it's difficult for slaves to rebel in armed rebellion is not only is it hard to get guns, but we haven't reached like firepower amplification yet in weaponry. So that thing that you do now where you give one squad of Marines a machine gun and a sniper and a bunch of M16s and they fight like 25 guys and there's 8 of them, you couldn't do that. Like maybe you had a revolver, but you had like a breech loader sharps rifle or a muzzle loading shotgun or something. You like one man fought like one man because that was the weaponry that you had. And so the fascinating part about Django Unchained is that he's so good with these guns that can fire multiple rounds that he is a force amplifier, but he's using force amplifying weaponry that didn't exist in 1858. So it's just a really interesting like take, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to do a racism tier list.
Oh, no.
Who's most racist? They're all getting canceled, but
they all suck. I'll tell you that right now. They're all the worst. Every single one of them is like the worst person I've ever seen. Right. How many slots do we have?
I was thinking 4 came to mind. 4 came to mind. It'd be Big Daddy.
All right.
Calvin Candy.
Okay.
Steven.
Sure.
And Billy Crash.
Ooh, okay.
Those would be my 4.
A dark horse rolling in.
We could also add in, and we could just make them all one. The the Brittle Brothers.
The Brittle Brothers.
We'll make them all one.
Okay, sure. So 5 entries. All right. Who's your least racist of the racist?
Who's my least racist of that group? I'm gonna stick with my guns, man. I still think Steven is much more self-serving than he is racist. And it has nothing to do with the fact that he is also African American. It's that his character does not. Everything he says that's racist is either to look good in front of Calvin or to put down Django to make himself look better.
Interesting. Okay. My number 5. Honestly, I gotta say Billy, and the reason I say this is because he is the only one whose racism does not blind him to the danger that is Django.
Very good, yeah.
And so in terms of like his behavior, he's higher on the list. But in terms of like as a character, where I think it affects his worldview, it affects a crap ton.
Yeah.
But like marginally less than everybody else. He's not so racist that he can't see that Django is dangerous.
Yeah. All right, let's put them bottom tier. Let's put those 2 together. They'll be our least racist of the.
Yeah, I mean my number 4 is Steven.
Okay, so that'd be 5, 4, 4, 5, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
So okay, that'll be our bottom tier. Okay, let's go to our middle tier here.
The big 3.
Who's in our middle tier? Are there 2 in the middle tier and 1 in the top tier, or 1 in the middle tier and 2 in the top tier? I don't know, man. Let's see. Who do we have? All right, this is maybe a little bit of another hot take here. I want to put Calvin in the middle because I think Calvin, as racist as he is so ignorant that he's ignorant to the fact that he is so racist. This is the way the world is. This is the way the world. This is how my daddy told me the world was going to be. This is how the world's been for so long.
That's a hot take, considering the man owns like 150 slaves.
Absolutely.
Hot take. Okay.
But with that said, he talks about he doesn't get the enjoyment out of killing the Mandingo. Or, well,
I mean, you say that, and yet, like, he does sick dog. It's okay. It's all right. We're not here to pick this apart.
He sticks dodge on him, but he talks about money first.
I'm kind of impressed that this is such a real thing, but I'm proud of us because, like, the racism aspects of the characters are so important to this movie.
They really are. And when you break down these characters, it's so easy to just
I think the thing is, it's so good because it's, like, different flavors of racism, and they're all freaking evil. Like, They are all the same.
Different flavors.
Like, they're all the same level of diabolically bad. It's just how is it represented in the characters.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 3, I'm actually going to go with the Brittles.
You gonna put the Brittles there?
Reason I say that is because though they're overseers, there is no direct in-movie proof that they are more racist than they are just sociopaths who like to hurt people. I'm not saying they're not racist, because they definitely are. But you can't convince me that the Brittles wouldn't take money to beat the crap out of white people either.
But do the Brittles need to be so physically violent in order to get their point across?
I don't know. Did Calvin Candy need to like make up racial science and talk about 3 bumps on the back of a skull to own slaves?
But that's what I'm saying. He's trying to explain the differences. It's
I think
not
that makes
even
you more racist, though. Like,
does it?
I think so. Like, I think if you've reached the point that you are like actively trying to convince other people why you're correct in being racist, you're like pinnacle racist.
I think Brittle Brothers get some sick enjoyment out of hurting Black people.
But they may get sick enjoyment. My point is not, I'm not trying to argue that they're not awful. I'm just saying if I'm using the eye test of the movie, I have the least amount of evidence that these guys are like more racist than they are awful people in general. Please don't make me explain this anymore. Just move on to
So are those two going to... Is Calvin Candy and the Brittle Brothers going to be our middle, or was Calvin Candy going to be your number one?
Calvin Candy's my number one.
Calvin Candy's your number one?
Bro, he owns a freaking 2-day wide plantation.
All right. Where's Big Daddy?
He's number 2. Big Daddy's number 2.
See, Big Daddy's going to be my number one because of that one line of he's so appalled whenever she even mentions treating Jane Doe like a white man. No. And he's the only one who is in the Klan. And literally hunts him down just because a black man, within the right of the law, got one up on him.
This is all valid, and this is why Big Daddy is my second most racist character in this movie. But Calvin Candy, not John, Calvin Candy is, to me, the most racist guy because, again, if you, as what I'm assuming is a relatively educated, wealthy person, like subscribe to that level of complete and utter like crock that is racial science, you have reached a level of racism that like our 21st century brains can't even comprehend. Like, you see the entire world in like divinely designed racism. Like you're at the point where like God designed you to be inferior. Like, that is the level of racism that John Candy is. Or not Calvin Candy. I'm so sorry, John. I love your movies.
All these John Candy fans
I feel so
for you,
bad.
Man.
Oh my God. That is the level of racism that Calvin Candy has reached.
All right, well, maybe our tier list looked a little bit different. What do y'all think? Leave it in the comments. Tell us who's the most racist, and then confuse everybody.
They're going to be like, please never do that comparison ever again. That's going to be the comment.
You're going to confuse the hell out of everybody who has not listened to the podcast and does not know what we're talking about.
It's okay. You're just going to have to edit out every time I said John. It's all right. You got this.
I want to make it I'm going to double it up. I'm going to put John Candy in here twice.
It just echoes every time I say it.
John.
Oh, God.
All right, man. We have a very exciting episode coming next week. Let's do something fun with the next one. Let's pick a number, okay? It's either going to be 2 numbers or 3 numbers.
Oh, no.
Do you know what I'm referring to?
Probably.
1 stars. Oh, man, I can't think of any of his other roles. 1 star's Black Panther, and the other 1 stars... Gerald Butler. I can't think of any of his roles.
I'm with you. I think we should do
pick a number, any number, double feature, maybe.
All
right, man. It's late on a Wednesday. It's Wednesday.
It's
late on a Wednesday. It's time to go to bed.
It's 10 o'clock on a Wednesday. Make sure the crowd shuffles in.
Thank you once again for tuning in.
All 7.5 of you.
Kyle, thank you for being a part of this, man. I appreciate you.
You're so welcome. I mean, I'm just such a busy guy, with the sitting around and the working 2 days a week, you know.
Yeah, I feel you. The full-time job and the parenting and the exercise.
Oh, wait, that's you.
All right. Yeah, so I sat down. If you guys haven't, it should have already been out by now. If you guys haven't checked it out, I sat down to edit our Rocky IV episode, and I edited the entire thing in one sitting because I was cracking up. I was loving it. It's a great episode. Please go check it out. That one and our Wyatt Earp, I think, are our two best that we've done. Period.
Exclamation point.
Period. Exclamation point. Question mark.
Question mark.
2 exclamation points to show that we did not mean the question mark. We are sure of ourselves.
TM.
It's too late. It's time to go to bed.
Yes.
Goodbye, everybody.
Good night and God bless.
All right. See ya.